karanjetlilive.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel, and today in this video we are going to discuss evolutionary process models in software engineering. So guys, in this video we will discuss what are evolutionary process models. Basically guys, these are the models in which we develop our software, okay, and then we release it. Then later the software evolves into full-fledged working system. For example, we want to make some information system. So before we build the full information system, we make a tiny basic working software for it, which has the basic functionalities. It does very few things, and then later with the time and later with increments, it is developed into full-fledged working information system. So basically your software, basic software evolves into big working information system. So what do we call such models? We call them as evolutionary process models. Okay, so basically what happens, we release a tiny software with very basic functionality. Later in increments we keep on enhancing the functionality of it until in the end you get the final product. So instead of making the final product in one go, we make the final products into in increments, step by step. First some functionality, then later some more, then more, and in the end you have the final working system. So basically your software evolves into information system. Okay, so basically these models are also called as iterative models. What do you mean by iterative models? Iteration means when we repeat something again and again, okay, and with each repetition we are little close to the final product. Okay, so similarly evolutionary process models, they follow iterative approach where we keep on repeating few steps again and again until our small software with the basic functionality evolves into full-fledged working systems. Okay, the product is released in different versions. Version 1 basic functionality, then another update you add more to it, then another update you add more to it. And all the major softwares which we are using these days like Instagram, WhatsApp, they all follow this approach. For example, the WhatsApp approach, initially it was released for text messaging. You can send and receive texts only, okay. Then later they added the capability of sharing the media, pictures and videos. Then later they added the capability of calling also. Then they added the capability of video calls to it. Nowadays the WhatsApp we use is a full-fledged information system where you can send messages, receive messages, share the stories, you can do video calling, you can have WhatsApp business accounts and much more. So what the approach they are following in this, they follow evolutionary process approach. First they release the product with basic functionality, later we keep on adding more to it until in the end you get the final product. Okay, so as I told you, evolutionary process models, they follow iterative approach. Okay, and in evolutionary process models also we have three approaches. One is called as incremental development. First approach, incremental development. Second approach, prototyping. So second approach, prototyping, and third approach is a spiral model. And the third approach is spiral model. So guys, now we will discuss each of this model one by one. So guys, the first model, incremental development. So what happens here is your full system is made part by part. Okay, instead of making the full complete system, you make it in parts, or you release the different versions, version 1, version 2, version 3, until you release the final product. Okay, so what happens now, these are the basic stages of SDLC. So you do some analysis, you take the basic requirements, do the analysis for it, design it, develop it, test it, and then you release part 1. Then you release part 1. So then take another set of requirements, do the analysis, do the design, do the development, do the testing, then release part 2. Okay, and then integrate part 1 and part 2 together. So this is version 1, this is version 2. So now our system is complete, not complete, our system is partial complete with 2 parts working in it, with 2 subsystems working in it in form of part 1 and part 2. Again, do the analysis, do the design, do the development, do the testing, release part 3 and add it to part 1 and 2. So now our system has part 1, part 2, part 3, and if here all your requirements are met, you stop here. Otherwise, we keep on repeating until we get the final working system. So what do we call it? We call it as incremental development. We call it as incremental development. And guys, the good thing about this model is here all requirements are not implemented in one go. All requirements are not implemented in one go. Only the basic requirements are implemented first. Then, after we release the part 2 and the leftover requirements, if we need to change them, we can change them before we start the next iteration. If we want to implement any change in the requirements, we can modify them, we can change them, and then we start the next iteration. So this is iteration 1, this is iteration 2, and this is iteration 3. Basically in this, your system is made into 3 iterations, made by 3 iterations, where each iteration is adding some functionality to the basic system. Okay, now again, and I told you the good thing about this model is, in case you want to make any changes in the requirement, after one iteration is complete and before you start with the next iteration, you can make changes in the requirements. And the other good thing about this is, before we give the full system to the customer, before we release the full final product to the customer will have a basic product. Okay, so he will have the understanding of the product and he will have the feel and how the products will use. He can use it, can feel the product, and he will know, he will have the idea about what is coming next. Okay, so what is this approach called as? It is called as incremental development. Do not build the whole system, rather build system part by part in iterations. Okay, and with each iteration you add some functionality to your product. Okay, and the other good thing about the system is, after the end of iteration, if we want to make the changes in the requirements for the next cycle, we can make it. So this system offers you the flexibility. Of changing. Okay, and since we do not develop the full system together, we are developing only part by part. So this approach is more cost effective also, because we do not need a lot of resources to make the full system. So what is this thing called as? It is called as incremental development. So guys, the next approach or the next model is called as prototyping. Now what is prototype? Prototype is nothing but a small working model of the real product which you are going to build. So before you build the actual product, you come up with a working model of it. Okay. Now when this approach is followed? So this approach is followed when the client is not sure about his requirements. Now what happens, guys? What do I mean by client is not sure about his requirements? So normally what happens, you as a software engineer or you as a system analyst, you are professional. Okay, you know what exactly I want. Okay, you know what type of system I want. But normally the client is not a software engineer, or he is not a technical person for whom you are building the product. Okay, so he has some vague idea what he wants, but he cannot tell you exactly what his requirements are. So in these conditions, we use an approach called as prototyping. typing so that we can understand the client's requirements. Even prototyping, guys, is also an iterative approach. Now, what is a prototyping? You meet your client, he gives you the basic, very vague initial requirements, because he cannot give you exact. Why he cannot give you exact? Because he is not a professional. He exactly himself doesn't know what exactly he wants. So he gave you a vague initial requirements. You try to understand, and whatever you understand, you design and you build a prototype. You design and you build a prototype or a small working model. Then you show that model to the client and you take his feedback. Okay, whatever you understand from him. So you made a model, you showed it to the client. Then you ask him, oh, this is what you need. Then you collect his feedback. Then he will say, yes, something like this, but not like this. I want something other than this. Okay, take his feedback, then again redesign the prototype. Okay, then again show it to client, again take his feedback, and we keep on repeating these steps. We keep on repeating these steps until you get the final prototype. See, here also iterations are there, and we keep on repeating these steps until you reach the final prototype. Okay, final prototype means here you exactly understand what client wants, and then from there you start developing the new, you start designing and developing. Here and is the design. You start designing and developing the new product. After you develop it, you test it, then you get the release the final product. So what is this approach? This approach is called as prototyping, and this approach focuses on understanding the customer requirements when he cannot tell you properly. Okay, so when the client is not aware of his requirements, so we try to understand by developing a prototype. And guys, this approach is bit expensive approach. Why it is expensive? Because before you develop the final product, you need to develop a prototype which is similar to the final product. So here you are making one product two times, isn't it? First you make a prototype and you spend all the effort and all the money in making the prototype. Later you come up with the final product. And sometimes using this approach, what happens is client is so happy with the prototype, he does not want the final product anymore. He says, yalla, this prototype I have, I will manage with this prototype. Okay, but that kind of makes this approach bit expensive. Why? Because before you develop the product, you develop the prototype, and sometimes the client does not want to let go the prototype, and he may not want the final product. Okay, so basically what is this approach? We call it as prototyping. It is also a iterative approach where you and client have multiple sessions of getting the feedback. He gives you the feedback, you get the feedback, and you keep on repeating these steps until you get the final prototype. Okay, so what is this approach? This is a second approach called as prototyping. Here your basic prototype, it evolves into the final product. It evolves into the final product. And guys, now we will go to the last approach, that is called as a spiral model. So guys, now let us discuss our last evolutionary model, that is the spiral model. Okay, so before we start, I hope all of you know what is a spiral. Spiral is like a spring in which we keep on repeating one pattern again and again. So this model is called as spiral model. So the main focus of this model is risk analysis. Till now, all the models which we discussed, no one talks about risk. Now this is the only model in which we focus on risk analysis. Okay, so it works. People come up with the objectives. So this is our objective, this is what we need. Okay, so we understand the objective, then what we do? We do a detailed risk analysis. Then we do a detailed risk analysis. So by risk analysis, what we do? We identify the different risks about this particular project. Then we evaluate those risks. then we identify how to handle those risks, and then we come up with the alternative solutions, how to handle those risks. So doing the detailed risk analysis, then we select the best plan or the best approach in which you will have minimum risk. So then what do? You develop and then you do the testing. You do the development and you do the testing, and after the testing is done, everything is done, you release the product. You release the product. Then again, when the client gets the product, he starts using it. He evaluates it. He starts using it, and he feels like something more needs to be done. Okay. So then when he feels something more needs to be done, so he comes with another set of objectives. Okay. Then again, based upon that objectives, you do the risk analysis. Okay. Then again, based upon the risk analysis, risk evaluation, then what is the best plan for it? Okay. Evaluating the different alternatives, you go with the development and testing. After development and testing is done and everything is okay, then again you give it to the client. Then again he will evaluate, he will use it. Then again he will plan for the next iteration. Okay. Again he lays down another set of objectives. Again you keep on doing the risk analysis. Again you develop, you test, you release. Okay. And we keep on repeating this spiral until the beginning to the retirement of the product. To the retirement. Retirement means the spiral does not end until you do not throw away the product. Okay. It starts in the beginning and the spiral continues till the product cannot be enhanced anymore. Till the product cannot be evolved anymore. We cannot add anything more to it. So we got to have a new product. Then we retire it. And again the spiral starts. Then again the spiral starts. Okay. So what is this approach called as? It is called as a spiral model. And in spiral model, our main focus is the risk analysis, which no other model does. Which no other model does. Okay. So quickly we will revise all the three models. Okay. And what are the main core focuses of each model? So guys, here is a quick comparison of incremental development versus prototype versus spiral. So here in incremental development, the main focus is you do not develop the system altogether, you develop it part by part. So part by part means you take a small set of requirements and you implement them. And when you repeat, you take another small set of requirements and you implement them. And when you finish one iteration and you begin the other iteration, if you want, you can make changes to the next requirements. If you want, you can make changes to the requirements. So here the focus is not to complete the system, just to go with the basic requirements, then go with another set of requirements. And before you start, in case you want to make any changes to those requirements, you can change the requirements between each increment. You can change the requirements between each increment. And guys, in this, since we do not make the full system in one go, so it is more cost effective. Okay, so it costs less as compared to other models. Then comes prototyping. What is prototyping? The main focus of prototyping is understanding the client's requirement. And here we continuously involve the client. We continuously involve the client in the requirement gathering process. Okay. So, and here the focus is on understanding the client's requirement. Okay. And this model, okay, since before you make the final product, you have to make a final prototype. Okay. So, which is similar to making a product. Okay. So, this model, it costs more than as compared to incremental development. And the third model, spiral model, same stages, everything same, but here the additional thing we focus on is the risk management. So what are the risks? Here no other model focuses on risk other than the spiral model. And since spiral model also, it can be repeating forever until the beginning to the retirement of the product. So this model also costs more. Okay, so again, incremental development focuses on small increments, and between the increments you can change the requirements. Prototyping focus on understanding the requirements where the client cannot explain you. Okay, and spiral model, the main focus is on the risk management. So guys, I hope you understand it. I hope you understand it. And guys, if you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be uploading more topics related to information technology and much more. So all of you, thanks for watching and stay tuned.